today we're going to focus on the 4 skills that we all need for communication and that our learners need in order to be able to pass exams. So first, let's have a look at the 4 skills. What are they? Okay, listening, reading, speaking, and writing. Now, all these 4 skills support each other, they're interconnected, and they can't really be taught independently. On the left, we've got the receptive skills, listening and reading, and then on the right, the productive skills, speaking and writing. So when we're teaching a second language, it's useful to consider what order we acquire these skills when we're babies in our first language. So what order do we learn these skills when we're babies? But any ideas in the chat box, I'll try and keep up with it. What do we learn first? Okay, first, yeah, listening. Okay, yeah, that's right, listening first. We listen first before we can speak, and we read before we can write. So it's important to remember that children need a lot of exposure to these receptive skills before they can be expected to produce anything for themselves. But they also need a lot of interaction and support along the way. So which of the 4 skills do your students find most difficult? I'm interested to know, because I think as an adult, I found reading perhaps the easiest because I had time. I learned Spanish recently, and I found reading easiest because I had time to look at the words and kind of work things out. But I don't think it's the same for a child. So, okay, most of you are saying writing and spelling is difficult. Listening, yes. Okay, okay, so basically everything. Yeah. Now I found speaking and writing very difficult partly because I was afraid of making mistakes. But yeah, our young learners might be still learning to read and write in their own language. So they need to learn these skills again when they learn English, so that they can communicate, but also so they can pass their exams. So let's talk about exams. Do you do tests in your schools? What levels are you teaching? What exams are your students taking? Okay, yes, Cambridge exams, not official, FC, okay, young adult, okay. Okay, we've got a lot of high-level exams going on here. Now, I'm particularly today going to talk about young learners, and I'm quite familiar with the Cambridge Young Learners exams, so I'll probably be focusing on those mostly. So how do you feel when you hear the word exam? How do your students feel? How do your learners feel when you tell them they've got a test or an exam? Does this look familiar? Okay, why do they have this negative feeling? Maybe exams seem serious, or they think they're going to be difficult. Perhaps they don't see the relevance of them. They don't understand why they need to do them. They're not much fun. Well, here are some of the things that children said to me when I asked them. So there aren't very many positive things there. What if it's too hard? I can't do exams. I don't see the point. Exams are boring. So in this presentation, we're going to look at how to prepare students with the language skills they need to succeed in their English exams, and also how to take the fear out of exams. So how can we prepare our learners for exams? Well, I think the first thing to remember is that you are most importantly a teacher of young learners and not a teacher of exam preparation. The exam preparation is a byproduct of being a successful teacher. So we have to apply the usual principles of teaching young learners, and we all know what these are. So using motivating child-friendly materials, fun activities, visual and audio support, interactive activities like pair work and group work, manageable and achievable tasks, and personalization. So these are some of the principles that you use every day in your classroom. I'm not going to linger on this slide because I'm sure you all know this already. So it's artificial to separate language into the separate skills, but for the purpose of this talk, and in line with most of the tests they're taking, I'm going to look at each skill separately. So starting with listening, because that's what we all start with when we learn our mother tongue. The key thing is to expose our learners to as much listening as possible from different sources. So what kind of things can they listen to in the classroom? What kind of English can you expose them to in the classroom? Quick brainstorm. Any ideas? Okay, songs, stories, alphabet, okay. Instructions, okay, numbers, rhymes, dialogues. Brilliant, you've got loads of ideas. Here's some I came up with. Don't forget teacher talk. This might be greeting them in English as they enter the classroom, giving them instructions like sit down, close the door. In their tests and exams, the examiner might speak to them in English, so they need to feel relaxed with this. Each other in pair work, role plays, speaking games. These all involve them in listening to each other. Audio and video materials. They're going to have plenty of listening practice from audio and video materials that come with our courses. These obviously include stories, songs, dialogues, chants, TPR activities and action games. These activities invite them to show understanding by responding physically to something they hear. This might be as simple as listen and point or listen and match. So along with a variety of listening opportunities, we also need to give them a reason for listening and find ways to keep them engaged while listening. So how can we do this? We can engage them by asking gist questions and by using pre-listening, while listening and after listening activities. This is a song from Story Central Plus. Let's imagine you've introduced the pets vocabulary, perhaps with pictures or flashcards and other pre-listening activities to pre-teach the language they need. Then let's give them a reason for listening. You might ask them to put their hand up when they hear an animal name, or perhaps point to pictures on a wall. Let's have a go now. Look at this picture, and I want you to listen. And the purpose is to find the animals. So listen and tell me which animals you hear.
Chapter 6, Lesson 5, Activity 1. My pets.
I have a turtle and a cat. I have a hamster and a rat. I have a fish and a mouse. They all live here in my house.
Okay, what animals did you hear? Very good. A turtle, a hamster, a rat, a fish. Love that song. It is actually my favourite song, so I do tend to play it a lot in my presentations. Okay, so I think you will have seen that listening for the animal names gave you a real purpose for listening. So once you've done this, you might show them the lyrics alongside the visuals, like we do in this activities. So the lyrics and the image support and scaffold their learning. And during the listening, you can ask them to perhaps number the animals in order. You'd obviously play the song more than once. Perhaps the second time you could get them to mime animals or start to join in and sing along when they're ready. After listening, we usually check understanding, perhaps analyse the grammar. Did you notice the grammar in this song? So it's the verb to have, I have, and I don't have any. You might go on to do some personalisation activities and ask them which pets they have, perhaps a survey, project work, and so on. And of course, always give them an opportunity to sing the whole song without doing anything else, just for fun. So we can do a similar routine with these gist questions, pre-listening, while and after listening activities, with stories as well, but I'm going to come to that a bit later. So songs, stories, and our course books are a wonderful source of listening materials and activities like these, which give them a reason to listen and something to do while they're listening. Here are a few from Story Central Plus. So this first one practices the present continuous tense and asks them to listen and number the pictures. The second one on the right asks them to, this is the language of appearances, and they have to listen and colour. And the last one practices the present simple and telling the time, and it invites them to listen and match the activities to the clocks. So they have a reason for listening each time and a task to do while listening, which requires them to find specific information and keeps them engaged. Now, listening for specific information is a key listening skill in the exams. Several of the exam activities get them to listen and number pictures in order or match names to pictures. These pages are from the Cambridge Young Learners Movers exam. First one gets them matching names to descriptions of people and what they're doing. And the second one, just like the one I showed you, asks them to listen and colour the picture. So in order to develop listening skills, we need to expose them to a wide variety of listening materials, provide the language they need, so preparing them by pre-teaching or eliciting vocabulary and grammar, give them a reason for listening, provide visual support. This might be pictures or video, or perhaps even gestures and movement from you. Engage them with pre, during, and after listening tasks, and support and scaffold throughout. So prepare them, break it down, give them support through visuals, pause the audio, play it again and again. So moving on to reading, like with listening, the key thing is to expose our learners to as much reading as possible from different sources, and to bear in mind that they might only just be learning to read in their own language. So we need to give them a lot of support. Quick brainstorm. What types of materials can we use to develop reading? Can you give me some ideas? What can we use to develop reading? Okay, comics, articles, stories, poems. Graded readers, brilliant. Okay, lots of ideas here. Here's my brainstorm. Text is all around us in signs, messages, posters. You can put these up in the classroom, notices like please close the window, don't run in the corridor. We can find stories, songs, poems in real books and in our course books, along with CLIL information texts. And there are authentic texts like articles, recipes, and so on. So just like with listening, as well as giving them a wide variety of materials, we need to give them a purpose and activities to engage them while, during, and after they read. These materials show a story, The Emperor's New Clothes, and a related CLIL reading passage, which is also about the weather and clothes. So there are two different texts on the same topic, reinforcing the same language. I'm going to talk about stories later. So I want you to have a look at this CLIL page as an example of a reading lesson. So you might start by getting them to look at the pictures and predict from the title, asking gist questions, what's the article about? You might use think, pair, share and get them to share their ideas and their existing knowledge about the topic. Then to give them a reason to read, you could ask them to scan the text, find out which countries are mentioned. While reading, they can read and match photos to paragraphs, or so sequence the text and put it in order. After reading, they can do comprehension exercises like this true and false on the right. This is just to check their understanding. And then they can go on to do extension activities like finding out more about the topic, project work, personalising. What's your favourite season? Our course books are full of different types of text that have accompanying audio and visual support. Here we have a recipe, an article, a newspaper article, and a quiz. And these have different activities to engage the learners. They write a name for the recipe, they circle the structures in the article, and they choose from multiple choice options in the quiz. Our tests and exams require learners to do similar activities. Here's a multiple choice exercise and a gap fill from the Cambridge Young Learners exams. These involve skimming for specific information, choosing a title, filling a gap, all kinds of different strategies. So once again, there are certain strategies to use when you develop reading with young learners, and these are similar to those that we discussed with listening. So expose them to a wide variety of reading material. Give them a reason for reading. Provide audio and visual support. Prepare and scaffold, so pre-teach, break it down, use shared reading. Engage them with pre, during, and after reading tasks. And use a variety of reading strategies like predicting, sequencing, skimming, and scanning. And reading aloud, of course. So moving on to the productive skills. Speaking presents us with all kinds of other challenges. The important thing with speaking is to give our learners the opportunity to speak in an environment where they feel safe and supported, and for them not to worry about making mistakes. As we've said before, we need to let them listen before we expect them to speak, and prepare them with the language they need in advance. There are lots of activities we can use to get them speaking. As we've seen already, songs are great for hearing vocabulary and grammar and context, and easy to join in and practice the sounds without feeling intimidated. What other kind of activities do you use to get your young learners speaking? Somebody's already ahead of me. Jazz chants and role plays. Games, role plays, dialogues. Okay. Songs and chants and pronunciation activities. They can join in when they feel confident. Speaking games, if they're set up carefully with clear instructions, can be a fun way to get them talking. Information activities give them a real need to communicate, like spot the difference. Pair and group work is collaborative and interactive. Telling stories is something children love to do in their own language, and with guidance they can attempt in English too. And yes, role plays and acting out. Get them using language in motivating context, and not forgetting personalisation. Personalising is a great way to get children talking about a subject they know a lot about. Here are some activities from Story Central Plus. The first one is a simple spot the difference activity. Once they can manipulate the language, in this case parts of the body and the verb to have, children can do this in pairs, with one describing monster A and one describing monster B. With puzzles like this, they're motivated to speak in order to show that they've worked out the answer. On the right, we've got picture stories. Describing pictures and sequencing them in order is another way of giving them a good reason to speak. They might go on to act out the story, taking the roles of different characters. And surveys, like these ones at the bottom, give them an opportunity to personalise, which is motivating in itself. It's always easier to talk about a subject you know a lot about. So as long as they're confident with the language they need, Children will seize opportunities to speak in English if we give them a genuine purpose. In their exams, there are similar activities such as this Spot the Difference from the Cambridge Young Learners exam and this storytelling activity. So tips for speaking: let them listen first. Prepare them with the language they need, pre-teaching vocabulary and grammar. Give plenty of pronunciation practice. Give them a purpose, ideally a real purpose, so finding differences, telling stories, conveying a message or giving instructions. Personalize. Talking about themselves is always motivating for children. And don't overcorrect. Focus on getting the message across rather than accuracy. Finally, writing. Good writing skills are based on good reading skills, and you need to recognize words before you can write them. So again, exposure to reading is going to help our learners with writing. Writing can be daunting because the errors are more visible on the page. They seem more permanent than with speaking. So it's important to support them and build their confidence. There are all kinds of activities we can use to develop writing. If we scaffold carefully, we can get them writing without overwhelming them. Starting at word level and moving on to sentences and then paragraphs. So what activities can we use to develop writing? Some great ideas here: diaries, cards, descriptions, sentences. Okay, writing about themselves, great. Okay, here's a few that I came up with. At word level, even doing crosswords and puzzles and anagrams, gap fills. Then phrases and sentence level, completing sentences, writing their own sentences, moving on to writing paragraphs, making posters, and authentic things like writing messages and postcards, invitations, thank you letters, and personalizing again. So we can adapt these activities for differentiation, giving more challenging tasks to more confident learners, and obviously giving more support to those that need it. We can supply support with word pools to copy from, or writing prompts and writing frames. Here are some writing activities from Story Central Plus. So at first we have on the left a gap fill activity with a word pool as a prompt. In the middle, there's a diary page where they personalize about what they like to do. And on the right, a poster about a superhero. These all involve some support, prompts or writing frames to guide them in their writing. These types of activities prepare them for the exams too. Here's a simple word level writing activity on the left, and on the right, this is from the higher level Flyers exam, where they look at pictures and write a short story. So here are some considerations for writing. Start slowly at word level, then move on to sentence level before paragraphs. Let them read as much as possible. They need to recognize words before they can write them. Make it purposeful and communicative. I mean, we usually write so that somebody can read it with messages or invitations, filling in forms with personal information. Prepare and scaffold by providing props like word pools and writing frames. Again, let them personalize and write about what they know, their friends, their favorite activities, and so on. And give positive feedback. Marking positively is really helpful. Remember to respond to the ideas they're trying to express as well as the language. This will encourage them to try out their own ideas. Now, we've mentioned stories a lot, but I've only touched on them briefly because I couldn't decide whether to use them for reading, listening, speaking, or writing. Stories are really powerful. They offer so many opportunities to develop literacy, language, and much, much more. With stories, children acquire all the language skills almost by accident. Stories provide opportunities for listening with audio and video support, or even the teacher reading and using gesture and expression. Reading with visual support and language in context. There are opportunities for speaking with joining in, shared reading, responding to the story, retelling it or miming and acting out. And of course, writing with follow-up activities, write a different ending, completing worksheets or using writing frames. At a glance through the Cambridge Young Learners exams, I found no fewer than 10 references to stories. There are stories with comprehension questions, there are gap fills, there are summaries and write a title. And the Flyers exam, as I just showed you, has them writing a short story. So you can help learners enormously by sharing a variety of stories with them. Because if they're used to the convention of storytelling, like there's a beginning, middle, and end, this will help them with these parts of the exam. So what we're saying really is that if we use the principles we're already applying to teaching English to children, along with a rich variety of materials, learners will develop the 4 skills they need for communication and for life. And along the way, they'll be preparing for the exams too. Before I finish, however fun and accessible the activities may be, the child still needs to be in the right frame of mind to approach an exam situation. They may be confident that they know the language, but still feel really worried about the actual exam. So let's focus quickly on how to take the stress out of exams. Be prepared. So plenty of practice with exam boosters and practice tests. Ask questions, ask for help, talk to teachers, parents and friends when they're worried. And even as simple as making sure they have everything they need, their pens and pencils, and everything is packed so they're as prepared as they can be. Some people benefit from visualization. So visualizing the test, sitting at the desk, opening the paper and actually writing. And of course, look after yourself. It's important to eat well, sleep well, drink plenty of water, and do some exercise. Activities like yoga encourage slow and deep breathing, which help to calm the mind and also help with sleep. And think positively. Encourage them to think of the exams as a challenge and say it's exciting, not scary. Get them to speak positively, saying things like, it's going to be fine, I'll do my best, I'm prepared. And also remind them that it's okay to feel a bit nervous. Focus on progress rather than perfection. They might not get everything right, but can they do better than they did last time? And of course, don't forget to reflect on the test once it's over by asking them how they feel, how did they do, what could they do differently next time. They're very likely to say it wasn't as bad as they expected, and some might even decide that they enjoy taking exams. So in conclusion, keep doing what you're doing. You know your learners and what they enjoy, provide a variety and crossover between the skills. Give them plenty of practice and differentiated support. Familiarise them with test activities so that they feel at ease and relaxed. And most importantly, have fun. Let your learners play and explore. Then you're sure to keep them motivated and engaged. So they will go from feeling like this to feeling like this. Okay, I'm going to leave you with some tips to take your learners from stress to success. With this mind map here. So good luck with your tests and exams, and thank you all for listening. And I'm going to be here for a few minutes more in case you have any questions. Thank you for all your lovely comments and all your input. Makes it much easier because I don't feel quite so alone here.
And we're here too. We're all here virtually with you. Yes. That was very, very, very useful. It was packed with many, many ideas for all of us, Viv. And we had a couple of questions in the Q&A box. Marina asked a big question. Do you think exams and tests are necessary to understand how much students have learned?
It's a good question. I mean, I'd love to think that, I'd love to say no and let's just let them play. But I know that's not really realistic. And I think assessment is very important. I'd almost rather call it assessment than tests and exams, because we need to know what level we're at so that we can know where to begin and what we can improve from. And I know there is pressure from parents and, you know, schools to get children to get to certain levels. And how else are you going to do that? So I do think they're necessary, but I just think we should take the emphasis out of kind of test-oriented teaching and, as I say, focus on all the fun things that we do anyway, in the knowledge that this will prepare them for tests anyway. I don't think we can avoid having them, sadly, but let's try and have a more positive approach to them and make them less scary.
Thank you so much, Viv, for answering that. And Natia asked, what would you suggest for students who are just not interested in any of the material that we present them with and they don't want to participate?
That's a really tricky one, because I do realise I'm in quite a privileged position of just sitting here giving theory. I'm not there in the classroom, but I have been. And actually I've taught more recently, I've taught French, and I do know those kids who are not interested. But I think I like to think there is a way of tapping into every child. I mean, they may have sort of different learning styles. So again, I think I'd go back to the old variety idea, you know, and trying to present them with as many different types of material as we can. Because, yeah, there was one quote, I think it was Krashen, who said this was just about reading, but he said there's no such thing as a child who doesn't like reading. There's only a child who hasn't found the right book. So I don't know, I mean, this is perhaps a bit idealistic, but I like to think that we can find a way to get through to them. And new teachers probably are in a great position to do that. As a writer, I think all we can do is try to stay as broad as we can in our scope of, you know, the types of stories and things that we include. Because, you know, I have a tendency to write animal stories all the time because I love animals, but I'm always reminding myself that perhaps some people don't, and to remember that, you know, there are boys and girls, there are people with different interests, some like sports, some don't, some like animals, some don't, and try to just keep the materials as varied as possible. But yeah, it's difficult. I know kids who aren't interested, it's hard to motivate them.
But I think what you said is the variety could be the answer eventually. Just keep trying, presenting as many different kinds of stories as you can to them, and you might just find the one that fall with.
Yes.
So keep trying. Yeah, that'll be lovely. There was a question about what is scaffolding, but I think lots of lovely teachers in the chat box have answered that question very, very fully.
Yeah, I think, I did a whole talk, I think, on scaffolding. So I can't remember the exact title of it, but I think it was with just the grammar one. But I think if you look on the Macmillan archive, you might find other talks about scaffolding. But yes, it is basically this way of, again, assessment does come into it, because you have to know a child's level so that you can know where they're at now, and there's a zone within which they can improve. And with scaffolding, you are giving and pulling back on support as required. So some children will need more scaffolding than others, and there are various different ways that you can scaffold materials that you offer them. And we try again in our course books to sort of scaffold the language throughout a whole unit, so giving support if needed, but they don't need to use it if they don't need it. I have done a whole talk on this, so I suggest you go and listen to that one next. But yeah, as you say, a lot of the teachers seem to have responded, and
yeah,
it's quite a hot topic. I think it's quite a useful thing to know about,
and incredibly important. The scaffolding. So, and there's another quick question from Christopher Wilkinson, who says, what do you advise for helping students to deal with parents who are from a culture that puts a lot of pressure on tests and exams?
I know that this is a big issue in a lot of countries. I think the only thing I can suggest is, communication with the parents, educating them. Tests have changed since they were at school. I think even the Cambridge Young Learner exam, that they are colourful. They are kind of sort of child-friendly topics. I mean, I don't love them personally, but they work, and they do use materials that children can relate to. So I think I hear quite often that parents don't think the children are working hard enough, or don't think they're doing enough testing, but perhaps they don't recognise that what they are already doing is actually preparing them for exams. So I think communicating with them and getting them to understand more how we prepare learners for exams these days is perhaps a suggestion. So communication between teachers, between the school and the parents is
very, very important indeed. And something I had to do a lot as well in Turkey, because that's one of the biggest challenges for all English language teachers here in Turkey, is persuading the parents that language teaching and assessment doesn't have to be painful as it used to be for them. Yeah. So yeah, lots of contact on a regular basis, if possible, between teachers and parents. Lovely. Thank you so much, Viv, for that very, very helpful session. For many people, they're already thanking you muchly, as Donald Trump might say. And let me just go through a couple of outro slides. So I'll need, if you can unshare, I will.
Yeah, I will. I'll say thank you everybody so much for your input, and yeah, thank you. I'll be back soon. Bye.
Bye. Okay.
I think I can stop sharing my video too.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So. I need to just a moment. I'm nearly with you again. Okay. So, if you want to find out more about where you can get lots and lots of material, one question which I left unanswered, because the answer is very long, but the answer may be here in this book, Story Central Plus. Someone was asking about pre-reading or pre-listening activities, and during activities, and post activities. I'm sure all of those will be very, very clear to you when you look at Story Central Plus, which, if any of you used it before, it's now been rewritten with a new grammar booster, new exam booster, and the exam booster in the students' workbook is very student friendly. As Viv said, it takes the fear out of practicing for exams, and makes children have fun as well as prepare for the young learners, the Cambridge Young Learners English exam. There is a lot of new CLIL content, enhanced phonics, and lots of updated digital components.